The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be? Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your Commander-in-Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Not quite dressed in all black like the Omen, but dangerously close. Vets reported to camp today. There was an assumption made by both Dan Quinn and Adam Peters that all 90 players would show up today. 89 of them showed up today, all but one. We all know who that one player was that did not show up and was not in attendance. We will talk more about said player here in a second. DQ and Adam Peters did speak today, address the media. We'll talk about their 27-minute press conference. Von Miller officially signed today his 1 year, $6.5 million contract that can get up to $10 million with incentives. In order to bring him onto the roster, there was a roster move made that surprised the hell out of me. So I was taking a nap and I woke up and my ex was flooded. I thought Terry had signed. I knew when I was going to sleep that AP and DQ were supposed to be speaking. So I just thought naturally you got all of the beat reporters tweeting out the same thing over and over again. That's how it usually gets, you know, they run up the tab quick. I'm like, this feels a little bit different. Maybe, just maybe, something got done. It was only after I started to get rid of the repetitive, you know, press conference transcriptions by all of the members of the media that I was able to see what actually transpired. My good friend Michael Wiley was the sacrificial lamb. And I talked about them cutting someone at a position where they've got an abundance of players. Running back is one of those positions. Wide receiver is one of those positions. It could have been an offensive lineman if they so choose. It was going to be one of those positions where there's a bunch of guys and you're not going to miss one. I didn't think it would be that one, however. I really thought that they saw the ability to catch the football. And again, I was looking forward to seeing him in the preseason. It's not a big deal. A lot of people were, you know, some people were losing their shit on social media. I'm like, it's Michael Wiley. Let's relax here. Like, it's not a big deal. Calm down. Like, I'm not losing any sleep. As a matter of fact, I saw that Michael Wiley got cut and I went back to sleep. Okay. Like, not losing any sleep over Michael Wiley being released. It's not a big deal. I saw some people going off like, I can't believe they cut him. You know, all the guys they could have come like, hey, easy. All right. They literally cut the 90th guy to make space for Von Miller. Stop it. Stop it. Okay. Clearly, they have seen Michael Wiley every day, and it doesn't matter if Anthony Lynn said he was the best of all of the young running backs. They feel like there are other guys that are better. Period. End of discussion. Not a big deal. But I will tell you, I'm surprised that Michael Wiley got cut. I am surprised. That said, Von Miller is here officially. Michael Wiley is no longer here officially. We move forward, right? So wanted to start with that because there were so many people adding me on X. Your boy got cut, which he was my boy. So I'm not going to sit here and like disown him because he got cut. I thought he was a guy that had a future here potentially. There's no guarantees when you're undrafted, when you were on the practice squad a year ago. There are no guarantees. Nothing said Michael Wiley was going to be here. It's not like how it was with Colson Yankoff and Tyler Owens last year, who, as undrafteds, made the roster last year and actually contributed to this team's success a season ago. That wasn't Michael Wiley, so there was never any guarantee. I was projecting, I was wrong. And I always tell y'all, when I'm wrong, I'll be the first to tell you I was wrong, because when I'm right, I'm going to be the first to tell you I was right. So got that one wrong. But doesn't change the fact that I think Michael Wiley has a chance to, be a solid player somewhere in this league. I wouldn't be surprised if he latches on somewhere else and we see Michael Wiley getting some, garbage time scraps somewhere else and, stays around for a year or two. It wouldn't shock me if we never hear his name again. Or if you do, it's in the UFL or the XFL or whatever the hell it's called at this point. UFL, right? Yeah, that one. So with that said, the press conference of Adam Peters and DQ took place today. And with that press conference, I thought we would get a lot more Terry questions right off the bat. Like, this is such a mild-mannered, media group. The press here, anybody that comes here and says that the press is tough. Not now, once upon a time, we had bulldogs in there that would ask the tough questions and would be, really aggressive with it, like you get in, places like New York and, Philadelphia and Chicago and places like that. You don't get that here. Once upon a time, you did get that here, though, with the Jason Reeds and guys like that used to work here that didn't give a shit, right? That's not how it is now. And I thought that Adam Peters was going to get bombarded with Terry questions right off the rip. And I don't know if they made a conscious decision as a group to not pepper them with Terry questions to maybe aggravate them, but maybe space them out. Because the first question obviously was a Terry question. Wasn't the type of Terry question that I thought it was going to be, but it was a Terry question nonetheless from John Keim, who always starts off the press conference if he's there. And then the next 8 to 10 questions had nothing to do with Terry. And then David Aldridge circled back and then kind of opened the floodgates. And then there were like 3 or 4 questions that kind of involved Terry in some way, shape, or form. I just thought there would be a lot more. But with that said, I do want to start the Terry conversation before we get to the questions and what AP and DQ had to say at the press conference. I do want to start, talking about Terry and his situation, because we've got more information and I really haven't talked to you about it since some of this information has come out. And I know some people, didn't necessarily buy the information that was coming out. But I don't think I played that soundbite, but I think most of you have seen Jeremy Fowler and the quick hit he had on ESPN over the weekend, where he essentially, and it was making its rounds on Commander's social media, where he basically said they're far apart, like really far apart, to the point where they're not even close to $30 million. And it got me to thinking, shout out to my guy, Derek B, who was like, before that Jeremy Fowler hit on ESPN made its rounds on socials, my guy Derek B hit me up. He said, Terry and the team are really far apart. Like, they're not even close. Terry's not going out there and essentially begging and squabbling over a couple mil a year. Like, they're not close. And I said, I think you're right. Like, Terry's not going out here and trying to pull on the heartstrings of fans and, trying to appeal to the organization and basically saying, I don't know if they value me or not. Like, he's not doing that if he wants 33 and they're at 30. That's not how this goes, right? They're at 26, like, and I don't know the number. I'm just throwing out a random number. They're at 26 and Terry's at 30, 3. And it's that's they're not close. And Terry's like, bro, you disrespecting me on a level that's, and again, I don't know the gap. They could be at 28 and Terry could be at 35. I don't know what the gap is, but it's a seismic one. And the way Jeremy Fowler worded it, he's like, I don't think that they're close to $30 million, which I know I was of the opinion at the beginning of this process that 30 would get it done, somewhere in that neighborhood. And then as I talked to more fans and I started to see where the market was going, I allowed myself to go into the 31 and in the 30, ultimately 33 million is like, okay, that's the number, 33, right? And I remember saying when it happened in the moment that the DK Metcalf deal messed everything up. It messed everything up because of all the guys that have signed, DK is the one you look at and you go, if I'm Terry, I'm better than him. And whether that's true or not, don't know, right? That's one of those beauties in the eye of the beholder, subjective type of conversations. You know how I feel about Terry. I've said this a million times. I think Terry's the number 12 to 14 receiver in the league. I'm on the high side of that 12, but the NFL scouts, executives, and coaches ranked Terry the 11th best receiver in the NFL. So I've been saying for years, Terry's 12th. That's right about where they put him at 11. And this is coming off of his best season of his career, arguably. From a touchdown perspective, without question, he's had more yards in the season. I'm not sure that I think he's had more catches in the season as well. But at the end of the day, they're not close. Doesn't feel like they're close right now. Where's my level? It's obviously gone up because we've hit camp officially. Terry didn't show up, and I was wondering, is he going to hold in or is he going to hold out? We got our answer today. Terry's holding out. He wants his money. He's not bullshitting, and he's willing to take these fines that are going to come his way that he's going to accrue by making his point. We'll see how long this lasts. Trey Hendrickson is the other big name and fish that's out there holding out as a veteran, looking for a deal, an extension on the final year of their contract. So we'll see how this plays itself out. Adam Peters, I talked about this last night. He isn't going to back down, but I think he is going to compromise. And I've mentioned different factors that you have to weigh when talking about the situation with Terry. And you always have to look at Adam Peters' background, where he came from and how business was conducted there. And it was funny because someone brought it up in the press conference to him and he didn't dismiss it. He said, I wasn't directly involved, but I was involved, right? More of secondhand information and things. But he saw it. He was there. He understood how these negotiations were going when guys like Deebo Samuel demanded a trade. And then, 3-4 weeks later, he's signing a long-term deal to stay in San Francisco. He was there for that. He saw the Trent Williams negotiation that lasted all the way to the end of the summer. He was there for the Nick Bosa deal that got done, 4 days before the season started. He was there for that. He saw that transpire. So you'd be remiss, and I've brought it up numerous times, and I've had so many people say, well, that has nothing to do with how he operates here. Bullshit. You're damn right it does. He's a human. We are shaped and molded by our experiences and our environment. It's impossible for him to take what he saw in San Francisco and not have some of that seep into the way that he does things and how he goes about his business. So, yeah, on the Terry panic meter, I went from 0 to probably 1.5, because I honestly thought this would get done before camp started. I did. I was one of the people that thought, don't worry about it, it'll get done. Deadline spur action. You know, this, and I've said this already, this wasn't a hard deadline. It was an imaginary one, but it was a rigid enough imaginary deadline that I thought something would get done. Similar to TJ Watt in Pittsburgh. I thought something would get done. You started to see a lot of teams get active. I thought we would be one of them, and Terry would be in camp. This has been a relatively, controversial free off season. Everything has gone well. I'm actually anxious to see how they handle this. They being the entire organization, the team. This is the first adversity that they've really had, non on the field, right? This is an off the field, I don't want to say self-inflicted wound, but it kind of is. Because, and again, we don't know what Terry's asking for, but they're not budging. So, going to be interesting to see how they handle this. They really haven't had much adversity. And I'm not going to lie to you, I'm a little disappointed because I wanted 0 distractions. Once again, my PTSD kicks in. I look up at, all of the struggles of this organization after having success and what happens the next year. And I just wanted it to be quiet. I just wanted it to be normal. And it still is, but this is going to hover until there's resolution. This is going to hover. So we'll see how long it lasts. I'm telling you right now, you probably should hunker down and buckle up. This one could last a little bit longer than maybe we thought. It'll get done. I'm still confident that he's not going anywhere. He's not going to be traded, any of that. Terry's playing for the Commanders this year, because without Terry McLaurin, you don't stand a chance at competing at a high level. They know it. You know it. We know it. So he's not going anywhere. But the question is, can you get him back in the building, get everybody smiling, sing Kumbaya, and put this behind us? That's the goal. We'll see how long it takes for that to transpire. But with that said, DQ and AP had their presser today. DQ talked about, he led off. They both had like introductory statements that they made. AP or DQ was more on the lines of, we're back, we're excited, we're not, most people come into, camp and they're looking at the first game of the season and they're this, that, and the third. He's like, we're not doing that. We're competing against ourselves right now. Iron sharpens iron, and we feel like we got a lot of good players in here. And so that's kind of what we're doing. And then, AP jumped in, talked about the newness of everything, talked about the signing of Von Miller, how that had become official. He talked about the new bubble, the new locker room, new nutrition center, new meeting rooms that exist within the building now, and all of the changes that have been made because of Josh Harris and company, and how they were so thankful for all of the things that they have done, all the investments made in helping this team, reach its full potential. No longer are we the little sisters of the poor where, the facilities are an F and, the place is old and decrepit. Josh Harris, since he's shown up, has put his money where his mouth is. He's hired the best help. I don't think it's a coincidence that we weren't a very banged up team last year. Knock on a little bit of wood, but I don't think that's an accident. When you hire good people, when you do it the right way, when you do the nutrition thing the right way, which Josh Harris came in here and immediately hired a brand new nutrition staff, added some of the best in the world in that field to this staff, right? Gave them a new nutrition center. It's a different day in Washington. And, those are the little things that us as fans don't really focus in on because it doesn't impact our day-to-day, but it impacts those players, the people that work in that building. And it's there that it starts. And all of those things come together to produce the product that we see on the field. You'd be a damn fool if you think not having a real bubble, not having multiple practice fields that you can actually access and use, you'd be a damn fool to think that that doesn't impact the play on the field. Doesn't impact how you go about practice, how much you can get done. For years, there was a whole field that they didn't touch because our previous owner was too damn cheap to fix it, to turn it into something real. Well, this guy came in a matter of 2 years, essentially, has gotten this thing turned around, and we are a real outfit. So Adam Peters started off his press conference by pretty much saying, thanks for all of the changes that are made. You guys are going to see a lot of these changes. And, it's just another step in the process of continuing to change the culture here and turn this into a consistent winner, or as I like to say, a triple P, perennial playoff participant. So with that said, Chef P, the first question came from John Com, was asked about Terry and, kind of where they are and, Terry's statements about, him feeling like he had already established his value and, maybe they don't value him the way that he thought. And Adam Peters basically said, quote, everyone in this building values Terry, close quote. Which we already know that to be the case, but, in Terry's mind, show me the money. Right? Don't tell me, show me. Something that I found interesting, probably one of the more interesting quotes from this presser came from Chef P. And it was relatively early in the press conference when he was asked about the acquisition of Von Miller. And I think it was Ben Standing that asked him, well, was this pre-planned? Did you go to camp or did you go to OTAs? Did you look at the position and say, yeah, we probably need to add? Because I thought that's what it was going to take for them to make a move, was them get to camp, look at the position and say, yeah, this ain't enough. But I also felt like it was something that was said here by Adam Peters that I then had to go back in the mental Rolodex and pull out what Lance Newmark said after the draft. And I said, okay, it all makes sense now. So Adam Peters talked about a couple of free agent. Well, he just said we had some misses in free agency, guys that they wanted that signed elsewhere. We talked about that already. I think I've just brought that up again. I think it was last show or the show before where I talked about, it was the Von Miller show, matter of fact. So it was 2 shows ago where I talked about, they wanted Joey Bosa, which I was like, no, you don't. No, you don't want Joey Bosa. No, the hell you do not. So glad he's not here. But they did want him. And they also, wanted DeMarcus Lawrence, which makes a ton of sense. That's a Dan Quinn guy from when he was in Dallas. But he chose Seattle. So they struck out on the 2 edge rushers that they really wanted in free agency. And when they did that, they kind of just pivoted. And we all thought, okay, well, the natural pivot is to the draft. Well, the value at tackle was better at their first round selection. The value at corner was exceptional with their second round pick, Trey Amos. And so the value was no longer there because you didn't have a 3rd round pick. There was no more value by the time you got to the 4th round. There was one guy that I was interested in. He went like 3 picks before our selection. So he basically said that they had put money aside for this exact reason. And it got me to thinking about Lance Newmark, because he said after the draft, you know, it's a lot of dudes out there. We got money. We got resources. We know where those dudes stand. We know what's up with them. And if we need to make a move, we can. And we will. And so that's exactly what they did. They waited all the way until basically the start of training camp. Maybe they, you know, knew Von didn't want to be at OTAs. And so they said, we'll just ink the deal right before. Maybe they were already in contact with him and they already knew what they were going to do. A question was asked about the stadium and the, you know, statements made by Trump. And I love the deflection there. Like Adam Peters was like, really, them type of conversations don't really make it to the building, to be honest with you, which we know is not true, but they don't, I mean, it's a non-football thing. Like those kind of questions, that's more of a team president ownership type thing. And they can keep it at that level. That's the beauty of when you have a real structure. That's a Mark Klaus question, right? That's a Mark Klaus question. That's not a Adam Peters question. I can direct that to the team president. Let him handle that. That's an owner question. I let him handle that. We just talking ball. Like, we don't really want to talk about none of that other shit. Great. Right? Year 2 players was a question posed to DQ, and he was basically asked, like, you talked about, which DQ did, the leap from year 1 to year 2. Hell, I talked about that last night when we were toasting to the 2nd-year players that we expect monumental leaps from. And I talked about Jaden Daniels and his 2nd-year leap and what is expected of him. If you got one of them ones at any position, it doesn't matter, but I like using positions where you can quantify it with numbers. Edge rusher is a great example. If your dude is like that jump from year 1 to year 2, massive. You see it, you know it, you're like, yeah, okay, we got us one. Usually the same thing applies for the quarterback position. And so anybody trying to lie to you or get you to sell you a bill of goods on Jaden's sophomore slump, I wouldn't bank on it. I'm not telling you it can't happen. I wouldn't bet on it. I wouldn't bet on it. That's for damn sure. But DQ talked about 3 guys in particular that he brought up, you know, right off the cuff. Ben Sinnott, Johnny Newton, and the third one was Jordan McGee that he brought up immediately. Now, he did circle back and bring up Brandon Coleman and Javonte John Baptiste, and then ultimately, you know, talked about Mikey and Jaden, and I'll talk about that in a second. But he talked about Ben Sinnott, Johnny Newton, and Jordan McGee as guys that he really has seen tremendous growth from already in the offseason program, and he's expecting it to carry over into training camp. That's music to all of our ears. He then said, you know, Coleman has done a phenomenal job. They've been intentional with him of just putting him at left guard and pretty much leaving him there so he can get all the reps that he can get there and really acclimate himself and get comfortable at left guard. Like, a lot of us thought going into it that he was going to get to compete for right tackle. And I think that was the initial plan until Josh Connolly Jr. entered the equation. Once he entered the chat, that was it for Brandon Coleman as a tackle. He's a guard now, right? So he talked about the growth that they've seen from him, you know, taking on that new, you know, responsibility and that position change. And then he talked about Javonte John Baptiste and, you know, seeing some growth from him. But he said in particular with Mikey and Jaden, he said it's rare to see young players do this, but in their rookie seasons, they self-corrected during the season last year. So whereas you talk about a Luke McCaffrey or a Ben Sinnott or a Johnny Newton, and these are guys that get to the offseason and say, hey, I need to improve here. I need to improve there. I need to get better doing this. I need to get better doing that. He was like, Jaden and Mikey literally made those corrections on the fly in their rookie seasons. Not to say that they don't have things they want to improve upon, this year from their rookie seasons, but they were so good as rookies. And part of the reason why is because they didn't wait to the offseason to make some of those critical changes to their game. They did it right there on the spot. So he brought that up and talked about those guys being special in that way. DQ was asked about, all right, the early stages of camp, what does it look like? And he talked about the next 3 days and how they're going to have this ramp up period. So for those of you unaware, today was the veterans reporting, and it was also a test for them, right? The rookies have already gone through their tests when they showed up on the 18th. It's a conditioning test. If you've been a fan long enough, you remember the Albert Hainsworth conditioning test and how awful that was. And how that was a week or two long process there where he couldn't pass the conditioning test. But all the players are subjected to it. Generally, these guys are in great shape. This isn't like it was 20 years ago where the football was not wasn't a year-round thing. Once the season was over, they didn't have all of this stuff kind of in place like this. Now, I mean, these guys are working out constantly. They're at the facility. They just were there, just a little bit over a month ago. So most of these guys are going to pass the conditioning. Well, all these guys are going to pass the conditioning test with no problems. So they did that today. He said they're going to work their way up. So the first actual day of practice, which is tomorrow, will feature helmets. It'll be limited. It won't be, a ton of stuff. They're really going to be installing, the defense and the offense. A lot of the things they did over in OTAs, they're going to be rehashing those things, installing them. He's like, we're not going to miss a step. Then we're going to be in helmets and shells in day 2. Then we're going to work our way up, to really, and, repping and getting our endurance up with the helmets and the shells on. Because you remember, the first week or so, you're not in pads. Pads don't usually go on. Now, this is going to be an interesting, training camp because it feels like the preseason gets on you quick this year because the Hall of Fame game, I've never seen it in July before. Like, literally, the Hall of Fame game is next week. All right. Probably next Thursday is my guess. What's today? I think the Hall of Fame game is the 31st. I've never seen the Hall of Fame game be in July. And so usually that is the start of everything. And then the following week, you start getting preseason games. So my guess is that the preseason probably starts the 7th of August, maybe, is my guess. And if that is in fact the case, it'll be August 7th before you know it. So we'll be talking about joint practices with the Patriots, et cetera, et cetera. That'll be here before you know it. So it'll be interesting to see if there's a little bit more urgency. DQ said, and nah, we going to take it one step at a time. We're not going to miss a step. But it'll be interesting to see if, because of how fast it feels like the preseason will be upon us, if there will be urgency in how fast the pads go on, et cetera, et cetera. But this was something that I don't know if you guys knew this or not. I brought this up to you, but I did not know the extent of the injury. So I talked to you about Ben Sinnott and how towards the end of the year he slowed down. I said he was dealing with an injury. We saw him wearing the harness on his shoulders, which is usually an indication that you've separated your shoulder and you're fighting through pain, right? And his play started to wane. The amount of snaps he played started to wane. And I said it was a combination of him being injured, him maybe hitting that rookie wall, playing a lot more, than he would normally be playing. And he started to make mental mistakes, et cetera, et cetera. DQ told us that Ben Sinnott had shoulder surgery. I did not know that. Maybe you knew that. I did not know that. So that was news to me. That he had surgery over the offseason, and he said him and Sam Cosmi were the two guys that were there constantly because they were both rehabbing over the offseason. So he's like, we saw Sam Cosmi and Ben Sinnott basically every day, and Ben is getting after it. So he's really excited about Ben Sinnott, and I think he's going to show this year why they spent a second-round pick, at least give you flashes of why they spent a second-round pick on him. And he also talked about being excited, DQ did, about Coleman taking that next step at guard, because I think most people, they weren't going to admit this last year because you just don't know. Maybe he comes in and shocks us all and is this exceptional, tackle. But I've told you guys pretty early on, this dude's a guard. And I told y'all that week 1, he's a guard. And, I had fans get mad at me. How do you know? You don't know ball, this, that, and third. I was like, okay, cool. I think everybody in that building understood. Probably, look, we knew what it was last year. We didn't have the depth. We needed him at tackle, right? We had dudes that could play guard. We needed him at tackle. Now you have the luxury of kicking him inside. I don't think it's an accident that they doubled down on the tackle position. They didn't just go out and get Larry. They could have just went out and got Laramie Tunsil. They didn't have to draft Josh Conley Jr. They could have just got one or the other and gave Brandon Coleman a chance to compete at tackle, but they understand that he's a guard. And I think DQ feels like he's really embracing this move, and he's going to be better because of it. So do I. Then some of the Terry questions started to come in here. I thought it was a really good question posed by David Aldridge. And he talked about Terry's negotiation and how there's so many factors, which we all know. We've talked about it ad nauseum. But he brought up, the age and, the money, the future, knowing that Jaden's contract is around the corner, the value that Terry holds within the building. And these are all really, really real things that you need to factor in, right? Like, so many fans like Terry's age and Terry's production and this, that. And I'm like, yeah, all of that shit is valid. But here's the one thing that you're not factoring into your equation when you start talking about how much Terry should get paid, and that's his value, what he's worth to this organization. Look, we can sit here and talk all the shit we want. This team offensively ain't shit without Terry McLaurin at wide receiver. As good as Jaden Daniels is, you are at a disadvantage if you don't have Terry McLaurin at wide receiver. Which, the whole, trade him, right? For who? For what? Because if you do that, you're essentially, I don't want to say you're punting on this season, but you're severely damaging your chances of being a competitive team at a high level this season if you don't have Terry McLaurin. So that's a pretty big effing deal to have him here. And not just because of what he means to this offense, also what he means to this team in the locker room. Again, how many times do we see pregame and postgame speeches delivered by a player? And how many times of those speeches that are delivered by a player that it's Terry McLaurin? I don't have to explain to you the importance of what he means, how he's a face when the media is looking for someone to be accountable. They go to Terry McLaurin. He's won the Good Guy Award. I think he had won it 4 years straight until Bobby Wagner snapped his streak this year. Like, Terry's that guy. And so when you factor in all of those different things, don't forget about that part, because that's a big effing deal. You can't look at your players and say, hey, y'all do it the right way. Y'all do it this way and you're going to get paid. And then Terry, who is the model of consistency in how you conduct yourself, even in this situation, even if you don't love how he, handled the, scrum after the Eastern Automotives commercial, he still handled it with class. Like if you watch the full, 30 minutes of it, he really wasn't shitting on the organization at all. Quite the opposite. But ultimately, he wants to be here. They want him here. And Adam Peters said, look, that is the tough part of negotiations, is factoring in all of those things and getting to a number that is satisfactory for the team and the player. Someone's going to be disappointed a lot of times, and that's the give and take, and, that's what they're working towards. He said they had some positive conversations. We'll see if that leads us to a resolution sooner rather than later, right? This was another really interesting question because I was going to stay away from it. Most of us are well aware of Von Miller's off-the-field exploits. He's one of them dudes that he'll put his hands on a female. And usually that's a no-no. Now, with that said, it's what you can prove. And Von has always made sure that nothing is caught on tape, none of that, shit that can stick. And so it's been a lot of hearsay. Charges are usually dropped and not filed, that sort of thing. So he's been able to kind of keep himself in the good graces of, people around the league and fans, right, for that matter. Because Von's been accused of doing some pretty grisly shit, if you know, right? That said, Adam Peters started off the press conference talking about just how good of a dude Von Miller is in the locker room. Again, he never said off the field. He's just like, yo, Von Miller is one of the best teammates. And remember, Adam Peters goes way back with Von Miller, back to his Denver Broncos days when Adam Peters was there. So he was there in Denver when they scouted Von Miller and they drafted him. That's how far back they go. So he's well aware of Von Miller and how good of a teammate he is. And he said he got a lot of unsolicited calls from people around the league just ranting and raving about Von Miller and his ability to assimilate himself into a locker room. And just as a side note, I know a lot of you watched the Next Man Up episode featuring Von Miller that was released today, about 12 minutes long. If you haven't checked it out, you should. Von literally said, I don't like to toot my own horn. He said, but I'm the best guy in the league. He didn't say one of the best. He said, I am the best player in the league at fitting in to a locker room and being one of the guys. I'm the best at that. I don't think anybody in the league is better. I said, well, shit, that's a pretty lofty statement. There's over 1,800 players in the NFL. And he's saying, ain't nobody better than me at going into a locker room, endearing himself to his teammates, being one of the guys, and building camaraderie and galvanizing guys. Nobody's better than me. Sound like Adam Peters is buying that as well. So, pretty interesting stuff. Adam Peters said, look, we do background checks on everybody. So we did our homework. We did our due diligence. We know what Von brings to the table. We're not worried. All right. I thought this was also a great question that was posed. And I literally talked about this last night. And so the question was asked of Chef P. You essentially, for all intents and purposes, are trying to win now. Like, the moves that were made all scream, hey, we trying to get something done right now. Trading for Laramie Tunzel, trading for Deebo Samuel, signing Von Miller. These moves all scream, push us over the top. We went to the championship game last year, push us over the top. Those aren't the moves of a team that's like, yeah, I just want to compete. Those are the moves of a team that want to compete now. But also, and I talked about this, I said, there are a lot of people right now that are giving Adam Peters a hard time. But I said, you got to understand, Adam Peters has done a masterful job of that tightrope of winning now versus giving yourself a chance to win in the future by not mortgaging away your future assets and things that give you flexibility, not going out and signing guys to these lucrative contracts and multi-year deals and putting yourself in financial hardship, not having to restructure deals. Like, everything he's done is so shrewd, and it's with now in mind, but also the future being at the forefront of his thought as well, right? That's why you see a bunch of these one-year deals, right? I've talked about how they've, essentially kept the 2027 offseason clean. There's only a few guys. I told you, it's like, think about it as a big, enormous 1 acre, yard full of snow. And there's not a lot of footprints in that snow in 2027. They've kept it really clean, and there's a reason why they've kept that relatively clean, right? They know what they're doing. And so I look at the job he's done, and he's talked about, we understand the value of a rookie contract. He said, look, we were the only team in the championship game of the 4 teams that were left that had a quarterback on a rookie contract. The rest of those teams have all paid their quarterback. So he said, you can win in this league with, a quarterback not being on a rookie contract, but we have a unique opportunity, and we want to try and take advantage of it. But we also are mindful of, building this thing into a winner and a sustainable one. And he's like, I don't know, because he talked about, the question was posed in the way of a championship window. And he's like, I don't know what window you're referring to, because the way we trying to set this up, as long as we hear the window's open. That's how they trying to do things, which is music to all of our ears. Then the San Francisco contract history and how it has impacted him as a GM came up. And it's something that I've been just like mashing, into the side of your head, all offseason when I've been talking about, the Terry deal in particular. I'm like, you have got to take into consideration how things were done in San Francisco while he was there, whether or not he was, front and center. And he made it abundantly clear that I was not, a massive part of those negotiations. But he's like, I saw them. I was aware of what was going on, and so you damn right that impacted him. Yeah, it did. And he acknowledged that. Like, he's like, negotiations are hard. He said, I've never been a part of a linear negotiation where everything goes well and the deal gets done. He said, I've never been a part of that. Part of the reason why he's never been a part of that is because he worked for an organization that really didn't have that. They didn't do that. It was always tough. Some organizations look at a player and they say, hey, we're going to break him off right now. We ain't even going to play around with it. Like, for instance, the Eagles. Howie Roseman don't even play with the shit. If they value you as a player, they take care of you as early as they can because he's smart. Howie Roseman is smart. He's no dummy. Unlike, he's the anti-Jerry Jones when it comes to paying players. He knows that the price of the pack is only going to go up. The longer I wait, the more I'm going to have to pay. The next guy's going to get paid. That's going to push this contract up. The next guy after that's going to get paid. Is going to push it up. I'm not waiting. I'm going to get my shit done. So I ain't got to worry about the inflation costs and how the next guy's going to push the price up. I ain't got to worry about none of that. They didn't have to pay Saquon Barkley more money. The man ran for 2,000 yards. They said, hey, Saquon, we're going to give you some more money, bro. Don't worry about it. Took care of A.J. Brown early before they had to. People ridiculed them for taking care of Carson Wentz early. Yeah, it backfired, but it was a great deal when it was done. And had Wentz turned out to be good and what they thought he was going to be, it would have been a tremendous deal for them. Some teams they just get it. And I'm not saying Adam Peters doesn't get it, but he's going to negotiate. Like he's going to try to make sure that the best deal that can be had for the Commanders gets done. Clearly. And I think that a lot of that can be traced back to his background. Adam Peters talked about Deebo Samuel being revitalized here. And he's like, man, I've seen him working out. He's in tremendous shape. He said one of the things that people, don't mention a lot is that we play this up-tempo offense. Like we're on the go constantly. You got to be in condition and in shape. And Deebo is getting after it. And he's like, I love it. And then DQ chimed in. It was like, joy is the thing that comes to mind when he thinks about Deebo and just how much joy he has and how much fun he's been having this year and the amount of energy he brings to practice and things of that nature. So, I think most of us feel like, Deebo is poised to have a massive season just because of what's at stake. DQ was asked about Jaden's development and what to expect from him in year 2. And he basically said that I just got off the phone with him the other day. The dude is a worker. These are all things that DQ has said over the offseason multiple times. Like, I'm worried about Jaden, bro. Like, I already know what this dude is about. I already know that this guy's a tireless worker and he's going to put forth, his best foot. And I don't have to really, there's nothing more comforting for a coach than to have a player at the most important position that doesn't require much, doesn't require a ton of motivating to get them to do the things that they need to do to be an elite player. Some guy like Kyler Murray don't want to watch film. Like, you can't be elite if the coaching staff has to beg you to watch film. You rather play video games. Like, you can't be elite doing that. You can't be elite if guys don't see you as one of the leaders on your team at the quarterback position. And it doesn't necessarily have to be you showing up early, but that makes a difference when guys are like, yo, I thought I got here early. I got here at 5:45 and Jaden was already here. They don't even know what time you got there. They just know I got here early as shit and you was already here. And that's a consistent thing that shows leadership. He could be just there eating Oreos and bullshitting, but he there early, right? So at the end of the day, he's like, I already know what Jaden is, and I'm just expecting him to be exceptional in year 2. So I think that's how most of us feel about Jaden. AP was asked about how much better the roster is, and he's like, I like to think it's better than it was a year ago. And he was basically like, look, we've done, a lot of things to put ourselves in a position to feel like we've gotten better. And I think we did. But he's like, one of the things a lot of people don't talk about enough is the growth of players that are already here. And he's like, the guys that we brought in as rookies, we think are going to be good. But the guys that were here last year that are now transitioning into year 2, we think are going to have a massive impact. And then the veterans that you brought in last year who are in here going into year 2, they feel really good about those guys as well. And then you brought in a new slew of veteran players that you think are going to, acclimate themselves well to the locker room, what's being asked of them, and, become, players that we can rely on this season. So he's like, anybody that can't see that this is a better team, just on paper, forget about, what they ultimately may do record-wise. If you can't acknowledge that top to bottom, this is a better roster, then again, I don't have any words for you. I don't really have anything to say to you. That's obvious that we're a better team than we were a season ago. Now, the question is, and I've said this multiple times, how much better? I can't quantify that. I can just tell you that on paper, we're a better football team. Maybe Madden does a better job of quantifying that. Maybe last year, this time we were a 76 overall as a team, and this year we're an 85. I don't know. Maybe that's how you quantify that. But I can just tell you, just looking at the roster, looking at the depth that has been acquired, and looking at players' trajectory and their arc, this team's better. This team's better. Then on top of that question, AP was asked about this being the oldest roster in the NFL. And that's something that's come up here with the Von Miller signing. It really started to get a lot of play, the whole oldest team in the league thing. And I've already gone through it with you guys as to how you get to be the oldest team in the league. We're not like decrepit. I talked about us building a bully and how we have young players and the people that wanted to play devil's advocate or who wanted to kind of shit on that notion of we're building a bully with young talent is y'all the oldest roster in the league. And I'm like, I hear you. But I can also tell you that while being the oldest roster in the league, we still have young, talented players. But when you add a Bobby Wagner and a Zach Ertz, and you have a Tress Way, and you have a Nick Bellore, those are some of the oldest guys at their respective positions in the league. And then you throw another 36-year-old Von Miller on top of all of that. And yes, you can easily see how we're the oldest team in the league. Nick Bellore is 36, if I'm not mistaken. Bobby Wagner is 35 or 36, and Ertz is 34, and Tress Way is like 35, and Von Miller is 36, if I'm not mistaken. And so there's a number of those guys. There's a bunch of 30s, 31s, a couple of 32s sprinkled in. Like, we're not a young roster by any stretch of the imagination, but we do have young talent. And to Adam Peters' point, who thought Ertz was going to come in here and Wagner was going to come in here and do the things that they did? He's like, we don't care if you're 22 or you're 35. If we still think you can play and help, we're going to bring you in. And that's what they've done. And they've had success with it. And until it doesn't work, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right? Then lastly, Chick Hernandez closed out the presser by asking a question about this team and how the perception has changed and how guys actually want to come play for the Commanders. When AP and DQ first got here, this was not a destination players wanted to be. I remember Frankie Louvu. This is when you could really feel the change last year. Frankie Louvu saying, I've already talked to dudes that want to come to Washington, right? I've already talked to some guys that want to come and be a part of this organization. And you could see the wheels turning there. And AP immediately went to DQ and he said, he talked about DQ's gravity. And I literally talked about DQ's gravity last year when you could see that we were having a good season. And I think it was like the bye week when I think I talked about it earlier in the season, but I really focused in on it during the bye week. And I talked about how none of this would have been transpiring without DQ. Like, to me, he was the lifeline and the heartbeat of this whole thing coming together the way that it did. I really believe that you can look at the coaching staff and say that staff isn't assembled in the manner that it is without DQ. Ken Norton's not here if not for Dan Quinn. Cliff Kingsbury is not here if not for Dan Quinn. And, Joe Witt Jr. isn't here. And if Joe Witt Jr. isn't here, then more likely than not, our defensive pass game coordinator, Jason Simmons, probably isn't here. And so it all feels like it's like 360 degrees of Dan Quinn. Like, it all kind of revolves around Dan Quinn. His gravity is it's momentous. And same thing with the players. Like Bobby Wagner is here because of Dan Quinn, right? Like he talked about Ken Norton Jr. as one of his favorite coaches. Well, Ken Norton's not here without DQ. So if you're here because of Ken Norton, well, you're here because of DQ, because Ken Norton wouldn't have been here without DQ, right? So you don't get Bobby Wagner. And Zach Ertz is here because of Cliff Kingsbury. Well, you don't get Cliff Kingsbury if you don't have Dan Quinn. And that's kind of like you see it working this way. Anthony Lynn is here because of Dan Quinn. You probably don't get Austin Eckler here if there's no Anthony Lynn. And if there's no Anthony Lynn, then, you know what I'm saying, there's no Austin Eckler, and all that happens because of DQ. And so Adam Peters literally just talked about the players here, the coaches here, a lot of them are here because of DQ, and it without him being here. And he literally talked about you don't have a Bobby Wagner here without DQ. And you don't have, we talked about this all-star staff, right? He's like, guys wanted to come from Dallas to play in Washington because of DQ. He's like, Tyler Biadasz ain't a defensive player. Like, you get it when Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler Jr. and guys like that followed him over here. You get that. Those are defensive guys. He coached them. It makes sense. They have a relationship. Tyler Biadasz is on the offensive side of the football. Why did he want to come over here? Because Dan Quinn's gravity. And so he talked about that. He also talked about Jaden's gravity. And he was like, yo, it always helps when you got one of them ones at quarterback. Yeah, you know, guys take, you know, like guys notice when you got one of them ones. And I talked about the Next Man Up Von Miller episode. And my favorite part about that was right immediately they got to the shits and he was like, yo, why you choose Washington? Like, bro, you could have chose any team. Like, you at the point of your career now where you chasing a chip, even though you got two of them. Like, why Washington? And Von Miller said, Jaden Daniels is a special quarterback. He's like, and I've been around special quarterbacks my entire career. He said, I had Peyton in Denver. I played with Matthew Stafford. I played with Josh Allen. He said, I'm not just going anywhere to play with just any quarterback at this point in my career. I've dealt with basically Hall of Fame quarterbacks my entire career. I can't just go to just average. Damn, that made me smile. That shit made me smile. And that pretty, and he, then later on in that interview, Von Miller, you know, reiterates it again. Like, it's a lot of guys that I wanted to come play with here, you know, and try to chase a chip, but Jaden Daniels is pretty much the top of the list. Like, I see greatness in that kid. And I've seen greatness up close and personal at the quarterback position. So Adam Peters is like, yeah, you know, dudes want to play on the same team. Dudes want to not have to play against Jaden Daniels. Like, that's a real thing. We're blessed, essentially, is what I'm saying. We're blessed to have DQ as our head coach and Jaden Daniels as our quarterback. And we're blessed to have Adam Peters as our general manager. We're in a really blessed state. So they've changed the culture. DQ, Adam Peters, you know, and what they've assembled, they've changed the culture. Now Washington is a destination, and guys like Von Miller, and I know we've said this before, Rio brought it up. It was a great point, but we're now a destination that dudes see as a place where you can win a ring. And Von Miller said, I think, you know, I want to see if I can be the missing piece. I want to be the first player in NFL history to win 3 different Super Bowls with 3 different teams. And I think this is a place I can get that done. When's the last time you heard somebody say that about choosing Washington and why they chose to be here? It's crazy. It's crazy. But that was the press conference in a nutshell. They talked for, like I said, over 27 minutes. That was the gist of it. At that time, they did not know Terry was not going to show up. Later, they would find out Terry is a no-show, and the official holdout has begun, and we'll see how long it takes place. So, with that said, let's get to the comment section, and then we will get out of here. Shadow Striker 789 Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, and thank you for kicking us off tonight. Really appreciate you. Who writes, if it's true that we are offering Terry 23 a year, then the panic meter shoots up to a minimum of 5. This will get done, but it might be get a bit ugly. So I don't believe that 23 is the number. But I do believe that it's rather low. It's a lot lower than any of us thought. 23 is a number that I've heard floated out there. I don't believe it. I think the number is more like 26, which is a slap in the face if you're Terry McLaurin, because as I've laid out, and I've talked about this, and Joel Corey, who I've kind of used as a reference when talking about this, John Keim had him on his podcast, which was a great listen. But I read the article to you guys. I gave you some of the excerpts that I thought were important. But it really details what a Terry McLaurin deal, should look like, and what Terry's agent is looking at, and where their starting point is. And 26 isn't even remotely close. Again, are you telling Terry? And I don't give a shit about age at this point, because, again, I don't see drop off. If I saw drop off, if I expected drop off, I get that. Like Mike Evans, at his age and how long he's been in the league. Keep in mind, Mike Evans is 32, I believe. So, like when he hit when he turned 30, it was like year 8 for him. He came in the league a lot sooner than Terry. You got to remember, this is year 6 for Terry. Like, Terry McLaurin hasn't been in the league that long. 2019 was his rookie season. So 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So this is year 7 he's going into. Year 7 of his career. He's had 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons, and he should have had 1,000 in his rookie season if not for the concussion that pretty much cost him the final 2 games. So at this point, you could look at Mike Evans and say, yo, Mike barely made it to 1,000 last year. Like, I don't know how much more, and Tampa Bay, because they can see where Mike Evans is in his career, they're loaded at receiver. They're loaded, right? He's not going to have to carry, that burden. Even if Chris Godwin is out, he don't have to carry the burden. They got dudes on top of dudes, on top of dudes, on top of dudes at the receiver position, right? They just drafted Emeka Egbuka, and he is nice. Jalen McMillan was one of the best rookies last year, production-wise, after the 2nd round, right? So when I tell you that it's not the same, when you look at Terry and you look at his production, you don't see a drop-off. And you can set it up to where if you do start to feel like you're not getting what you paid for, there can be an exit ramp. There can be an exit ramp that you put in there that gives you a chance to get out if need be. But to look at Terry and say, you ain't better than T. Higgins, that's asinine. I don't give a shit how old T. Higgins is. Terry McLaurin is better than T. Higgins. Period. T. Higgins would be a number 1 receiver on some teams. I don't know what T. Higgins, the number 1 wide receiver, looks like. I don't know, because we haven't had to see that. We don't know. I'm just telling you, I don't think he would be able to do what Terry McLaurin has done. And so you can't convince me that Terry's not worth more than the highest paid number 2 wide receiver. If I'm his agent, that's a non-starter for me. What are we talking about? Then if anything, and this could be viewed as disrespectful, but if anything, the number starts at 29, because I have to have my guy being paid higher than the highest number, 2 wide receiver. And maybe like guys like DJ Moore who signed deals. Like DJ Moore ain't Terry McLaurin from a production standpoint. DJ Moore just got nice. And so he was willing to take a deal. I think DJ Moore is making like 26 and some change. And, Commanders may be looking at that saying, you see how much DJ Moore is making? And Terry's like, I don't give a fuck about DJ Moore. I'm better than DJ Moore, 1, and 2. I mean more to y'all than DJ Moore means to the Bears. That's not even the team that drafted him. Same thing with DK Metcalf. I mean more to y'all than DK means to the Steelers. That's not even the team that drafted. They just traded for him. So if that number is 23, and I doubt it, I think it's more like 26, which is still disrespectful. If the number is 23, I agree. Then the meter shoots up to about a 4 or 5, because that's super disrespectful. And the gap between where Terry, you're talking about a gap that might be every bit of 10 million. If they're all the way down at 23, which is right around where Terry is right now, he's making, like, his number is 22 and some change right now. So you're telling me you're not even really giving me a raise per se. And I know Terry's north of 30. So you're talking about almost a 10 million a year gap. That's massive. Massive. And if the gap is that significant, yeah, buckle up. This shit could get real ugly. Really, really ugly before it gets better. So I'm with you on that, Shadow Striker. Lang Hughes, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Lang Hughes writes, Nikki tweeted while he got cut with NFI designation. I saw that. I don't really know what to make of that. Like, I don't think he's hurt. Clearly non-football injury. I don't know what to make of it. I just know he got cut, and I was shocked that he got cut. That's all. But could he have injured himself doing something non-football related and they got pissed off and moved on? Sure. But I don't know. I didn't think it would be him, right? But maybe there is something to that. Mark Mullinux, my guy, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Mark Mullinux writes, hey Louie, I've been watching been trying to relax a lot. It's all good, man. I appreciate the support. Whether you've been active, you've been lurking, or this Terry situation has got you a little bit on edge, it's that time, Mark. It's that time. A lot of people put it down after the season is done, after the draft is done. They put it down and don't pick it back up until this time of the year. It's all good, man. So whatever the case may be, I'm here and you here, and that's all that matters. That's all that matters. DJ 23, been a member for 29 months. ED like Wiley to the defenders, LOL. Look, man, Ed is a guy that when we talk about the defenders, he talk about the defenders like he talk about the Commanders, bro. He would love for Wiley to end up on the DC defenders. Love it. It may happen. It may happen. I didn't think my guy Wiley would get done like this, but it is what it is. We move on, right? Like I told y'all at the beginning. Navy Ramjet, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Shout out to my guy Navy Ramjet. Got your email, man. It was great. And I'm going to respond to it. So just wanted to let you know. He says, blessings to you and the family, Lou. AP mirrors Bethard a little. 80s, we rarely had a first rounder because he sought vets. C. Wilbur Marshall. Yeah, it was a little different in the 80s, though, right? Because there was no salary. I mean, there was no free agency. So you could be a little bit more aggressive in trying to go and get vets, because you could keep teams together longer. So if you felt like this was a missing piece or a guy that could be super impactful for you, you go get him, because you didn't have to worry about losing him, right? And you knew what they were about. Like, the thing about drafting players is you don't necessarily know what you're getting. You hope they come in and contribute, but you can't be assured of that. You know, Wilbur Marshall, you already knew what he was about from his time with the Chicago Bears. So you knew what he was bringing to the table, you know? So, yeah, AP has a chance to put himself in the annals of Bobby Beathard and how we hold him in such high regard around these parts. But you got to win, you know? You got to win. You got to assemble a crew that can win. And we think AP is well on his way to doing that. So, you know, we'll see what happens. David Brown, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for the generous donation. Really appreciate you. Thank you for the 50 spot. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Can't thank you enough for your generosity. My guy, David Brown, writes, I love Terry, but, here we go. We can't overpay for him. We have several other key pieces coming up. Tunzel, Lattimore, Louie, Debo. Terry is worth 28 to 30 mil max. If not, give me picks. All right, so let's break this one down. Thank you for the super chat once again and the support. And thank you again for the very generous blessing, right? So while we do have other key pieces that have to be paid, our salary cap situation is, I don't want to say it's pristine. It's in really good shape, though. Like, we're not hurting over here for money. That's number one. Number two, yes, Tunzel is going to be extended at some point. Lattimore isn't getting extended here. So you don't have to pay Lattimore. So that's not something you need to factor into this conversation. I agree. Louie is a guy that I think can get extended as early as next year. And if he plays well again to the point where he's another all-pro player, and yeah, Louie probably needs to be extended after this season. I agree. Debo is in the Lattimore category. I don't think because just think about it from this perspective. Are you really trying to dump close to $50 million a year, over 50 potentially, depending on what Terry gets? Let's assume Terry gets 30 right now. Let's just, because it's a round figure. And then let's say Debo, I think he's getting what, 17, 18 this year? Can't see him, eclipsing that next year. But I think Debo's trying to get a 2-year, $32 million deal next year, something to that effect, which will be the last significant payday that he probably sees. Can you see us investing $46 million into the receiver position on just two guys? I don't. And again, and both of them being 30 years old, Debo turns 30 this year, Terry turns 30 in September. Nah. So Debo, I don't see him getting paid here. Lattimore, I don't see him getting paid here. Yeah, you got to pay Tunzel. Yeah, you got to pay Louie. That's fine. You can still pay those guys and pay Terry. Like, you're not hurting. You can take care of your guys. See the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills paid about 8 dudes this year. All of them guys, homegrown product, dudes they believe in, guys that they feel like are part of the championship culture that they've put together. And they paid every single one of them except for James Cook, because he plays a position where you feel like it can be somewhat disposable. However, they love James Cook, but they don't love the price that James Cook is asking for, which is why they haven't paid him yet. But you can pay your guys. You can pay your guys. So Tunzel, Louie, yes. Lattimore, Debo, no. And you say give me picks. So you're essentially, I don't want to say you're punting on this season, but you're willing to not have Super Bowl aspirations then. If you're willing to trade Terry this preseason, if you're willing to trade Terry this summer, then you're willing to not have Super Bowl aspirations. That's what you're saying, David Brown. I just struggle with that. First of all, what kind of message does that send to your locker room? If you can't get a deal done with Terry, who's done it the right way, who's never been someone that has stepped out of line not one time, who's always been a guy that has been a model citizen, a model of consistency, always done it the way that you claim you want it to be done, and you trade him? How does that work in your locker room? Like, you can't, like, they haven't offered lip service this entire time. They haven't done that. They've been pretty consistent with their messaging, with their approach to their messaging. They've been pretty consistent. You can't then double back after telling us, yeah, this is how we're going to do it, and this is what we want it to look like. And then you say, but the dude that has done it the exact way we want, now we can't pay him. That's crazy to me. Now, again, 28 to 30 million max. Again, if I'm Terry, you can't get me to sign up for 28 million. You can't. I don't think you can get me to sign up for 29 if I'm Terry. The number is 30. The first number has to start with a 3. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Once again, thank you for the super chat and the blessing. Really appreciate you, DB. Finesse the plug. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member for the last 17 months. Who writes, if the gap is too big, AP got Amari Cooper on hold. I mean, if you're hinging your season's value, like how much you can potentially maximize your season, right? So if you're hinging your season's value on Amari Cooper, that's a sad state of affairs that I don't want to go down that road. That's a dark road with no end. That's a dead end, right? It's a dead end. There's no way out of that road. The Bills went and got Amari Cooper and got absolutely nothing out of him. I don't want to go down that road. That road leads to nowhere. So I'm good. Trust me, I'm good. I really am. I'm good. So in my mind, it's gotta be Terry. And it will be. I'm not tripping about it. And frankly, he belongs here. Now, they know it. And again, they're testing Terry to see just how serious he is. Terry said, I can't see myself stepping on the field without a new deal. Trey Hendrickson has said, I ain't stepping on the field without a new deal. I can't play on the current contract I have. He ain't playing neither. Now we got to find out where Terry is. Because the trade demand, if the number is as wide as Shadow Striker said, which is 23, if it's anywhere in that neighborhood, 23, 24, I mean, shit, I said 26. That's still low as hell. And they're not trying to budge. If they're not listening, then the trade request is coming eventually. It's going to come. I don't think they're going to honor that. They're not going to trade him, but they're still trying to see just how serious Terry is about taking a stance. How is he really standing 10 toes down in this? They're trying to see. We gonna find out together, I guess. I guess that's what it's gonna be. We gonna find out together. But I see somebody say, shit, I'll take Cooper right about now. I'm good. Y'all can go ahead and do that shit if you want. I am all the way good. So y'all can miss me with that. Just bring me my guy back. You know, I just want 17 back. I don't need none of that extra shit. I don't want no washed veterans who ain't got shit left in the tank. Just give me my guy back. Give me my guy back. You go get Amari Cooper, you still don't have a number one wide receiver. So what have you really done? If Amari Cooper was like that anymore, would he still be available on the streets as we speak? Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I look forward to chopping it up with y'all next time. Speaking of which, tomorrow, Commanders Kings ride again. So looking forward to y'all catching all four of us over on the Commanders Kings channel tomorrow. We will talk about the start of training camp. We will talk about what was said at this press conference. We'll react to the Terry McLaurin holdout, among other topics. There will be so many things to talk about. And so we look forward to all of you joining us over on the Commanders Kings channel tomorrow night. I will probably be back here on the Louie T Network on Thursday, but you already know, once training camp begins, you're going to get a training camp daily, video from me every day. So you're going to get that in some way, shape, or form during the course of the day. So y'all know what it is. I'll probably be lurking in the comments tomorrow. I may do that one live. We got to wrap up the summer series. So now that has met its conclusion, so we'll talk about, like, if you haven't already, and I'm going to reiterate this on that video, but if you haven't already, go get your book for $1. What are you doing? The man is giving away the best deal of the summer. Go get the book if you haven't already done so, okay? Anyway, I digress. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Until then, I'm your man Louie T, signing off. Y'all take care. God bless. Good night.